All right, hi everyone. My name is Alan Covey, and I am an anthropological archaeologist at the University of Texas. I want to introduce kind of where I'm coming from, which is adjacent to and maybe a little different from some of the participants in our next panel. And the panel is Models for the Future. And in some ways, I struggled a little bit because it's a conference on the future, and these are the models for the future. And there's so much overlap in some of the themes that I think recur from the panel that we've just seen, and that we're going to be hearing about in some of our future panels. So, community-based research, engaged research, collaborative research. These are things that are really important to my colleagues who are going to be speaking shortly. And what I wanted to lean into a little bit at the outset is some of that place of the researcher at this nexus between this world of academic expectations and the world of community expectations. We've seen heard some really powerful points about the difficulty of traversing across that, the challenges of engaging with communities that have a whole other set of concerns. If you come in and say, what would you like from us? Having communities saying, we need healthcare. We're worried about climatic issues. We're worried about development opportunities, things that might be very difficult for researchers to engage with, certainly in the short term, and especially for early career research. And I want to kind of lean into the fact because the Lewis and Clark Fund is so important for supporting early career research, to point out the kind of special maybe burdens, opportunities, and costs that early career researchers doing fieldwork carry into the 21st century, that this is the generation that is going to be the most influential in defining what fieldwork looks like as we move forward into the future. So I wanted to just talk about some of the things that we've seen in the panel on community, build on that to say what are some of the implications of these public-facing, community-engaged approaches when it comes to methods. So how do you choose to work when it comes to the social considerations? What's the relationship of the researcher within that broader constellation of contacts? And then the technologies that might be brought to bear with the positive sides of that and some of the potential drawbacks. We've already heard in the last panel of the benefits of automatic monitoring and data collection, and then the potential drawback of taking people out of the field and losing some of the human aspect of data collection. So we're going to hear a lot of these things with our speakers in this section. I wanted to talk just from the place of archaeology to make a couple of points about, as we talk about the future of research, recognizing that research carries forward legacies of the past. Being in an institution that dates back to the Enlightenment gives us a kind of powerful place, especially for a field like archaeology, to say that the research that we do, some of the basic field methods, when we dig stratigraphically, we don't dig so differently than Thomas Jefferson did. And yet we are trying to dig with different purpose. And I think for some of our presenters, with the question of when should we dig, knowing that it disrupts and it destroys. So thinking about archaeology being a practice that when we go back a few centuries, we think of it as extractive, a term that came up in the last panel. We think of it as something that is in a model, increasingly Western model of going out into the non-Western parts of the world and taking something from them, bringing it back, putting it into order as part of also a process of trying to put the world in that sort of order and under a Western dominion. And so the idea of archaeology being going through a phase of antiquarian collecting, where the first part of the acquisition process was almost the object as metaphor. So saying we want this thing, it represents a story or a culture or a part of the world, whether or not even the information is accurate. If you go into museums that have early collections, a lot of times the culture name or where it comes from is mislabeled. But that next phase of the work for Western archaeology as we pass through the Enlightenment is the taxonomy of that. Taking the antiquarian collections and giving them names, giving them dates, putting them into a natural science order that then in the 19th century, we see helping to morph into the disciplinary lanes that both guide us in what we do, but as we've heard in our last panel, create some obstacles in how we might talk to people that are doing adjacent kinds of research. So when we think about archaeology, there's this period of seeing the work as going out into the unknown, acquiring collections, bringing them back. As we move into the late 20th century in my field, we move into a more, the field research as model. So collecting data to kind of put people in their environment, to create a sense of evolutionary change over time, to tell bigger and maybe comparative, commonly human stories across space and time. And so this was a different sort of task that anthropologists started to do, but it was one that they didn't really do with very much input from local people. So the idea that you could still go out, you might hire a local crew, but you weren't rewarded for treating the local crew as collaborators. Even when I went to the field, I think one of the things that's really both wonderful and sort of tragic at being at an event like this with a lot of early career researchers is for me the feeling of regret, having been in the field long enough to have started with a different set of expectations. So to have gone out in my early career, not well enough prepared with the language, not well enough prepared to have a model of community engagement, having been trained by advisors who are great scientists and really thoughtful and empathetic people, but didn't see the importance of collecting oral histories or asking local people what they might want from the project. And that's kind of where the more recent work in the field has moved toward, is models that aren't just socio-ecological, but models of doing science and doing field work. And I think that's something that we've already heard today, is how does the researcher put themselves into the work of doing research? And so some of the, and that can be a, I think archaeology we've seen a lot of growth from people saying, well, I'm just going to go talk to the community. And now I think people realize communities are really complicated and dynamic collections of people. Communities don't act always in the same way or with the same goals. And the goals of the community might sometimes be to not have any archaeologists there. I think in the era of repatriation, that's been one of the things that has been forced on archaeologists, that the generation now coming into the field embraces, is the idea that maybe not doing archaeology is sometimes the best answer for how to engage with communities. And so I wanted to talk just in terms of both the sense of, and I realized I was looking in the wrong place for the camera. Let me wrap up quickly with just a sense that another aspect of the change in archaeology that's happened recently, that I think is a theme that's going to resonate with some of our speakers, is the proliferation of research to a point of just mass production of knowledge. Probably close to 50% of what's been published in archaeology has come out in the last 10 years. And then a major shift in early career research away from fieldwork, because it's become riskier in terms of the kind of science that it seems to do. There's a huge startup cost. There's the risk of failure. The ability to produce the publication products that are needed to start a career. It's a lot easier to work with the kinds of collections that a few centuries of archaeology have accumulated in museums and deposits and in archives. And so seeing a shift as part of this preparing for this conference, I reviewed about 1,400 National Science Foundation dissertation grants since the 1980s. And you see a shift from basic fieldwork, excavation, and survey being about 60% of the research in the late 80s. It's about 25% today. And so the question of how people get out into the field, knowing that it's a risky thing to be in the field as an early career researcher. It's really hard to go and build your own thing. And you might run the risk if you build something on someone else's territory, if you go into your advisor's research area, or if you depend on other people's infrastructure to get things going. And so from that place of sort of precarity and opportunity, I wanted to introduce our three speakers. We have Danielle Schmidt, who is a PhD candidate in the Joint Departments of Sociology and Community and Environmental Sociology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's a mixed methodologist who combines ethnography and spatial analysis, who conducts work at the intersection of rural and environmental sociology. Her current projects examine land tenure transitions, the well-being of agricultural workers, and rural livability. And she'll be presenting on work that she's doing collaboratively in northeastern Montana. Dr. Asil Yaman is a PhD in classical archaeology, who's recently held a postdoctoral position at the University of Pennsylvania. He's currently a faculty member in the Department of Theology and Religious Studies at Villanova University. And he's going to be talking after 20 years of archaeological research in the Eastern Mediterranean, talking about his community engaged project at the site of Phoenix in Turkey, the Phoenix Archaeological Project, which is a multidisciplinary community engaged project studying the ancient city of Phoenix. And our third speaker is Dr. Jacqueline Fitzgerald, who received her PhD in plant biology and conservation at Northwestern University and the Chicago Botanic Garden. She's currently a visiting assistant professor of biology at Williams College. She's an ecologist whose research focuses on patterns of within species variation, how the consequences of any such variation scales to higher order ecological processes, and she works in the Rocky Mountains primarily with bumblebees. So if you'll join me in welcoming Danielle Schmidt to the stage, we'll start off with our first presentation. Thank you. All right, thank you for that, Danielle. We're going to move on to Dr. Asil Yaman. I'm sorry, I blanked on you, who's going to present on his collaborative interdisciplinary research at Phoenix in Turkey. So.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for introduction. And I want to thank Linda and all organizers in APS. This is great to be here. I'm so happy. And today I'm going to talk about Phoenix archaeological site and what we do in Phoenix, what we try actually. And I will start with the location. So Phoenix is located in southwestern Asia Minor, right across from the island of Rhodos. It's such an inspiring landscape, by the way. Even though it's geographically close to the Rhodian coast, it has always belonged to the mainland Carian region, ancient Caria, attached to the Anatolia. Today is part of Muğla province in Turkey. So the site sits on the Bozburun Peninsula. It's a rugged and mountainous landscape that still feels untouched. Its main harbor, Serçe Bay, played a key role in ancient trade and communication across the Aegean. So what makes this beautiful peninsula remarkable is what we call a Chersonesian culture. It means peninsula in ancient Greek. So a peninsula-based communities, they shared their own economic, political, and religious traditions since the early Iron Age, let's say the 8th century BCE. And within this network, Phoenix stands out as one of the best preserved rural settlements in Mediterranean, possibly. And what is fascinating is it was never fully abandoned. Life continued here for centuries and still does today in the nearby village of Taşlıca. I will show you Taşlıca. So this continuity gives us a rare chance to study everyday life from antiquity to the present day. You can smell, you can touch the tradition. So this is our cultural geography. It's a dramatic cultural landscape, where steep mountains meet the sea, shaping how people built, farmed, and lived for thousands of years. Very briefly, Phoenix is important not only because of its ancient buildings, iconic buildings, but also because it shows a deep balance between people and nature. So this steep side and mountainous landscape organized with terraced and fields, and there are many water systems, rock cut cisterns, sacred areas, traditional pathways that together form one of the most complete and sustainable cultural landscape in the Aegean. Life here was built on self-sufficiency. People used rainwater, they collected rainwater, and they had a, kind of micro-solutions we see here, because the microecological system gives us early examples of local, small-scale sustainability that speaks directly to the challenges we face today. So there are many lessons. And not just an archaeological site, is a living model of how ancient knowledge and community values can guide more sustainable futures. I'm going to show you, this is the importance part. I think this is the longer version of my presentation. Yes, this is a general map. Since 2021, our field surveys at Phoenix have revealed a remarkably complex rural landscape. So as you can see here, we have identified major public spaces like Agora, the marketplace, acropolises, and extensive cemeteries, necropolises that cover the entire territory. And across the valleys, you see the green dots here, we documented more than 70 ancient farmsteads and agricultural terraces, ancient agricultural terraces that complete the picture of everyday rural life. What's especially exciting is the presence of at least 8 sacred spaces dedicated to Greek deities such as Zeus, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, Dionysus, a Cretan goddess, Ilithia specifically. She was the goddess of midwifery and childbirth. It is so interesting that shows the cultural connections with the Aegean islands, Greek islands, and also the existence of Kybele cult actually marks this also. So all of this you see here, that Phoenix was not an isolated settlement, but it's a multi-layered, multicultural landscape. And during the Iron Age, especially in the Hellenistic period, let's say 4th century BCE, it's specialized in agricultural goods like almonds, olives, and wine, so-called Rhodian wine, actually produced here. So briefly, there are many buildings, so it is a longer version of my presentation. This is the Acropolis. We have 2 Acropolis in total. This is one of the fertile plains in the region, covered with the almond trees and olive trees. This is Kaleda, another Acropolis. We have 2 Acropolises that see everywhere in the region. I'm skipping fastly. Yeah, this is one of our sacred space, Apollo Sanctuary. Oh, Kübele Open Air Peak Sanctuary. It's a 2,600-year-old one. It's directed to east. Yeah, some unique burial elements like step base, pyramidal tombs from Hellenistic period shows the cultural identity, the peninsula culture specifically we have. So this is a family cemetery from Hellenistic period. And the diagram you see, we have more than 70 farmsteads in total. I think this is one of the rare examples in Mediterranean. Yeah. So you see 2,600-year-old agricultural terraces, people still using them. And our hydroarchaeological research showed that the whole area covered with rock-cut cisterns and kind of water management. They collected rainwater during the winter time and use it in summertime. They still practice it. Actually, the locals in Taşlıca, they clean the rock-cut cisterns and water the animals today. Oh, sorry. It's very hard to summarize what we have, but in the medieval period, we discovered more than 15 churches, and there were a active community that continued this rural tradition. And of course, the Ottoman heritage, important because the Ottomans also continued this tradition in the region. We have 2 windmills still actually standing there. And this is the Taşlıca village, let's say modern Taşlıca village near the Phoenix. This is Auntie Fatma, she's selling almonds in the region still. Yes, it's very hard to summarize in Taşlıca, but people still live in a traditional life. There are wild horses, goats everywhere, just like a Sicilian territory. And they practice some ancient agricultural practices like 2-field system. They name it kapı. They actually separate the region into 2. They actually leave the animal in one side and make the agriculture other side, and they switch it to make the soil fertile. So this is area actually ecologically important too. We identified more than 27 new fig types in the region, undocumented one. So it's culturally important, but also ecologically super important. And this heritage, unfortunately, under danger right now. There are looting, illegal excavations happening, and we try not only to research, but preserve the landscape. So what we see here, the micro solutions, I'm going to be fast. So some agricultural practices, land use, terracing, some 2-field systems, adaptation of architecture, reusing the buildings throughout the ages. Just skipping. They were saving the soil through terracing. They reused the buildings again and again. So now what we have seen, how ancient Phoenix sustained itself, I would like to share what we are doing today through the Phoenix Archaeological Project. So since 2021, our work has reflected the same self-sufficient, resilient, and sustainable nature that once defined the ancient site. But I want to remind you that our goal is not just to uncover the past, but to understand how people adapted, produced, and lived in balance with their environment. And they carry that knowledge into the future. So PAP is eco-friendly, multidisciplinary project. We use non-invasive and low-impact methods to study and preserve the landscape while protecting its natural ecology. So our research, you can visit our website, brings archaeology, architecture, geology, history, gastronomy, and other biological research also ongoing in the same time. So more than 30 people from 6 different countries working in this project. So I thank whole team. They are doing a great job, and all connected through community engagement. So we work closely with the people of Taşlıca. They are the local experts and volunteers to keep the cultural memory alive. So ultimately, PAP aims to build a new model for sustainable archaeology, one that protects the land, honors the local tradition, and passes on the 2,600-year-old story of Phoenix to future generations. Of course, we survey the land, pedestrian surveys, and many things, but I want to show you that there's a theoretical background of our work. So entanglement, we try to see the interdependencies between the human and material culture and human and nature, and all of them, they are entangled. So everything is connected here. So it's like a living laboratory for us. And we believe that how we do archaeology is just as important as what we study. And our field practices are guided by an ethical action plan focused on care, conservation, and sustainability, not only for today, but for future generations. So it's our, basically, responsibility. So you see some pictures from the fieldwork. But I want to remind you, instead of large-scale excavations, we use mostly digital recording, mapping, and surface analysis to understand how people interacted with their environment. And when we look at our practice, the methodology, so our fieldwork combines traditional archaeological techniques like intensive surveys and the locus lot system with advanced tools such as drone mapping, GPS, and orthophotos. We also use the LiDAR scanning too. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and I thank our mapping engineer, Serhat. He's very dedicated to it, doing a great job. And I have some videos, but they're not videos. They're not Google pictures. They're models, actually. They're millions of cloud points you see. They are all coordinated. So we also created a digital database to collect everything, and every member of the project can join and add some details. And Phoenix Archaeological Research Center in the town, we actually transformed this space. It was a former elementary school. Now it's a research center, but it's not just research. It's a public space for everyone. We have public events. We educate the local children there, and have some events like gastro events. Let me show you some pictures. So this is where, this is the place, and this is where the theory meets practice, actually. So we had 2 gastro workshops here, and it was so nice to see it. I'm completing. So I want to thank all our supporters, and thank you.
Right, thank you. And our third